We'll focus on physical therapy first, and we've got Kristi Renneker from CRS and Amy Pearman from UAB. And so I'm going to hand it off to Kristi, and then she'll hand it off for the next session.
Hello, I am Kristi Renneker. I am a physical therapist. I work for Children's Rehab Services. I have been there about 6 years. That was not my first job, though. I worked for 10 years at Early Intervention here in the state of Alabama, and prior to that, 10 years at Children's Hospital. So, for those of you who don't know, Children's Rehab Services is a state agency that is one of the 4 branches of ADRS, which is the Alabama Department of Rehabilitation Services. Ginny will talk a little more about that, but we are, of the 4, we are the second branch in the sense of where kids are in their development, or any participant in ADRS. Children's Rehab Services serves birth to 21 for kids with any special health care needs. Our primary goal, I think, would be for kind of coordination of medical care through medical clinics. We have, I'm not going to list all the medical clinics, but the ones that are probably pertinent to this group is Seating, Positioning, and Mobility Clinic, which is where we evaluate for durable medical equipment needs, home assessment, bathroom evaluations, anything that has a billing code. For those of you that might know what that is, we address that. In addition, we have Augmentative Communication Technology Clinic, which is for our kids that need devices for speaking. We have we are a partnership with Spina Bifida Clinic, CP Neuro Clinic, where we have a multidisciplinary team where we see neurologists is there, as well as nutrition, social work, physical therapy. Those clinics are primarily for consultation. They're not a way that you're coming to get direct therapy services. So you would be set up through a clinic, and then from that clinic, whatever referral may come out of it, we would help kind of manage where you land in that. We hold seating and mobility clinics. Let me step back real quick. Within the state of Alabama, CRS has 7 districts, usually done by counties. So for anybody that's out of the 4 counties that Birmingham is, or Homewood, is Coleman, Walker County, Jefferson County, and Shelby County. But then you can go and research on our website what county you might be in, and then you can be affiliated with that district office. When I was asked to speak here, we were talking about transition. Of course, transition in our department starts at 12. Certainly we serve kids birth to 21, but about 12 is when we start thinking about what the next stage of life is going to be and what it's going to look like. Most of our kids are served through the school system up until they're 21. We work very closely with the school systems, primarily in helping to make sure that their durable medical equipment needs are met and that they can access in the least restrictive environment in the school systems. Typically, our services are directly related to evaluations. So children that might need hospital bed, that might need bath equipment, that might need a home assessment to sort of decide what kind of shower chair would work for them. Most of the durable medical equipment is going to require some sort of an evaluation to be covered by insurance. However, some equipment is not covered by insurance, as you can imagine. Primarily bath equipment. To be enrolled in CRS, you can be evaluated in any of our clinics, but there is a qualifier for financial services that you would qualify under to make sure that you could, CRS could help fund some of the equipment that is not covered by insurance. Oftentimes, clients that are enrolled in CRS will have a care coordinator that can help them navigate the systems of like Medicaid waiver programs if you have a primary insurance. Again, I said we work very closely with the school systems because typically your early intervention system captures that birth to 3. Then you've got a preschool transition. You're very well taken care of in that. Then you go into the school systems. You have outpatient clinics that you may be attending. But the problem becomes as you get older, there are less resources for therapy. I know that Children's Hospital, and I know someone can speak to this, I think they may see children on a private basis or an outpatient basis up to 18. Is that probably about right? I know United Ability, which is an outpatient facility here, affiliated, maybe 14 is where the cutoff would be. 14. There are other programs, south of town in Easter Seals, that usually serve up to 18. But after 18 to 19, and you need any sort of direct therapy service, we'll talk about that in a minute, it is not going to be affiliated through CRS any longer. Let me think. As far as equipment goes, referrals would be made directly from your care coordinator enrolled in our program. The care coordinator says, wow, this person would benefit from coming to a seating position and mobility clinic. We then are affiliated with local vendors that help us provide that equipment. Families get to choose their vendors. Once that process is set up, you come to clinic, and then we help provide the necessary paperwork that helps to get the equipment for the future. Things that we usually cover or help with are wheelchairs, gait trainers, walkers, hospital beds, bath equipment, shower equipment. Did I say hospital beds too? I think I did. Patient lifts. Some of the other things that we can help try to get that may not be insurance covered would be things like standing frames, special chairs for feeding. There are community resource funding that we also help with to help offset the cost when insurance doesn't cover that. But that's what I do up until 21. When our clients age out at 21, we typically transition them to the seating clinic at Spain, which is affiliated with UAB. So this is Amy Pearman, and I'm going to let her speak about Spain.
Good morning. I am Amy. I'm a physical therapist by trade. Kristi and I actually went to PT school together back in the dark ages, so that was exciting to see her here today. My children also attended UCP as kids, so it's good to be back here. My experience as a physical therapist has primarily been in adult neuro rehab. I have worked in home health settings, outpatient settings, inpatient rehab, the wheelchair seating clinic at UAD, and am currently serving as a rehab case manager on the spinal cord injury team at Spain Rehab. So I was attending today as a participant to reach out for my patients that I serve for community resources, and ended up getting recruited to sit on the panel by Cathy Carver, who could not be here today. So you get the B team. So just a little bit about what Spain has from an adult rehab. One of the biggest differences, like Kristi said, there's lots of resources for physical therapy until you're an adult. Once you become an adult, as far as an insurance reimbursement for physical therapy, those visits have to be based on a functional decline or a new onset of illness. For instance, if you've had falls, or if you've had a car accident, or some other acute incident. So most insurances limit the number of visits either by a financial piece with Medicare. If it's a commercial insurance, normally it's a number of visits. Oftentimes those have to be resubmitted for recertification at, say, 7 visits. And then Medicaid does their visits based on interventions. So you get so many gait training visits per year, you get so many therapeutic activity visits per year, that sort of thing. There are very few clinics in the area that accept adult Medicaid for physical therapy. We also find that occupational therapy and speech therapy are not covered by adult Medicaid. So oftentimes the PT may be helping to serve all of those needs. If it's a person coming forward that needs OT or speech, they're trying to help with all of those disciplines. UAB does take adult Medicaid, and as a case manager, one of my big jobs in trying to find resources for folks is calling to say, hey, does your clinic accept adult Medicaid? So we find lots of them that accept to age 21. We find that there are limits after 21. Primarily, the clinics that are going to accept adult Medicaid are hospital-based. Again, at UAB, we do accept adult Medicaid. I think there are a couple of other local hospitals that do as well. Some of the smaller communities, we found that there have been private corporations that have come in and taken over the therapy clinics and now no longer accept adult Medicaid. So that has been a little bit of a challenge for us in trying to find places for folks to go for therapy. From a seating standpoint, there are a lot more resources, again, before you turn 21. However, there are still resources available as an adult. There is a wheelchair seating clinic at Voc Rehab that Cathy Carver is the primary therapist. They do evaluations with local vendors. So I know we have several of our local vendors here today that come in and evaluate. From a coverage standpoint, with most commercial insurances and Medicare, you can get a replacement chair if it's deemed necessary every 5 years. For Alabama Medicaid, it is every 7 years. Now that doesn't mean that if you have flat tires, or if you have a cushion that goes bad, or if you have things that need to be repaired, those things can still happen. Oftentimes all the time, it requires an order from your physician. Sometimes that requires a visit to a seating clinic, sometimes it doesn't. But that is something that is probably a big difference as far as the replacement of a chair, with Medicaid being every 7 years. And you guys in the back, tell me if I say something wrong as far as DME. The other thing that we find, CRS is a great resource for things like bath equipment, that when you become an adult, it is considered a luxury to take a bath. We don't really understand that, but most insurances for adults do not cover bath equipment. So that is a challenge that we find for our folks. I also work with a lot of patients who are newly injured as adults, and when I tell them that it takes me luxury to bath, they are not happy about that. Let me think. What other
Process of getting into spank rehab.
Process of getting into spank rehab. It's based on physician referral. There is typically a waiting list for the seating clinic. So if you know that something's coming up with your chair, I would go ahead and try to get an appointment as soon as possible. Right now they have 2 part-time therapists doing the seating clinic at Spain. So you can imagine there's a little bit of a wait list. The same for outpatient services. If the sooner you know that you've got something coming up, or if you've had a change in condition, it does require a physician's referral. And then, of course, getting in to see the therapist. One thing that is probably not therapy related, but that I'm just going to go ahead and put a plug in for because it is something that just drives me bananas as well. As a case manager, I work with people who have to do intermittent catheterization. And one of the big things that we have found in transitioning from childhood to adulthood in Alabama, through Alabama Medicaid, if you're cathing 4 or 5 times a day, you may be requiring 4 or 5 catheters a day. For adult Medicaid, you get 31 catheters per month. And math is not my forte, but I'm going to tell you, 4 times cathing a day does not equal 31 per month. So our adults oftentimes will transition to a catheter that is reusable, that you can clean and with a clean technique. I have been talking recently with some of the manufacturers of catheters who are trying to advocate with our state legislature to try to get that changed. We're one of the few states in the country that only offer 31 catheters per month. So as children, go ahead and just start stockpiling those catheters because that is something that's difficult. Now, of course, you can continue to buy catheters out of pocket, but that also becomes expensive over time. Yes. If you guys have questions specific for physical therapy, Kristi and I are happy to answer those.
Kristi, could you talk about the requirements to be in CRS?
Yeah, I'm gonna let, tell them who you are.
Well, I wanted to just jump off of what Amy said about catheters, issues with therapy, all of these things that change with Alabama Medicaid after 21. That is why your Medicaid waivers become vitally important. And I'm Ginny Rediker, I'm one of the CRS care coordinators, and so I'm going to be speaking about those issues later, so I don't want people to kind of get a panic. There are ways to work around some of these issues. And I have, we've got McCartney here, who's someone who's actually personally experienced CRS sitting clinic and is transitioning to adults. So if anyone has any questions about the real life experience of transition, please feel free to ask her. I volunteered you. When it comes to the process of enrollment in CRS, we might really address that a little bit more later on. But it is as simple as locating your local office and making a phone call. Anyone can refer to us, parent, teacher, therapist, anybody. You just have to make that first phone call, and a family has to be willing to participate. We are volunteer basis. We do not require service. So you cannot be forced to participate in CRS, and so sometimes a provider may think that it's a good fit, but a family may say it's not what we want. So ideally, I love a family phone call. That is really, I think, the best way to start that process because it's a state program. And I think most of you know when you enroll in a state program, there's a process, and there's paperwork, and there's things you have to sign, and there's a couple of hoops to jump through. And so if you call directly to our office or to your local office, we can really have that good conversation about the process. We have brochures at our table, and so you can figure out the phone number for your area. And every area of the state is served by a CRS office. Does anyone else have any questions for our panel? We've got a lot of CRS wheelchair users, I think, in the audience. So hopefully they had a good experience and are ready to transition to Spain.
Just as far as equipment, I don't know if you're the right person or not, but since you guys do evaluations in homes for equipment, etc., a lot of times when you do need something, you have to order it and you get it and you get, and that's it, and it's $5,000 and you're stuck with it. My husband went to a convention in Atlanta several years ago, and it was enormous, and they had all kinds of stuff. He didn't even remember how he found out about it. Do you guys know when those big conventions are where you can go and see all this kind of stuff?
So our next speaker is with Alabama, our department, but she's in the Rehab Technology division, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about the lending library project that's being launched here in Alabama. And so we're actually going to touch on that within the next few minutes.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm so glad it's going to line up kind of perfectly to that question. So if you can hold it, we've got someone here who can really answer that for you.
Ginny, specifically speaking, that's called the Med Trade Show in Atlanta. I think it's in October. Is that right, guys? I'm sorry, it's called the Med Trade Show in Atlanta. It's usually in October of every year. You are correct. It's worldwide. People bring all sorts of products in a very large convention center. October.
And a little plug for Kristi and what she was able to do. Yesterday, we were able to get a product that had never really been seen before in Alabama to our local office just because of a really great PT and a really great vendor working together. And so sometimes it is asking us to see if we can get something to trial because we don't want you stuck with that piece of equipment that's never going to get used because we know that's what happens. If you can't practice ahead of time, a Hoyer might seem fine because you don't have another choice, but then it doesn't fit anywhere in the house. Sorry.
We live outside of Birmingham. Would we transition to Spain Clinic also, or should there be another clinic in our county?
Where do you live?
Tuscaloosa?
You're going to come to Spain. If you're coming for feeding, Probably Spain is going to be the closest clinic. I do think that DCH Northport accepts adult Medicaid for therapy services, but most likely for seating, I would have the same.
I'm going to speak real quick to that because I used to work in the Tuscaloosa district office. Our vendors that you use probably statewide will go to Tuscaloosa though. And, there are a few PTs. Typically they have to be hospital-based though, and so DCH Northport would be a hospital-based clinic.
So if we don't have any more questions for PT today, I think we're going to invite ADRS Rehab Engineering and our ADRS Lakeshore office to come up and talk to you a little bit more about another piece of our agency that is going to be really vital in your transition process and kind of feeds really nicely into what Kristi and Amy were sharing with us about equipment and making the best use of your equipment. So if y'all will give us just a minute, we'll get them up here.
I just want to encourage everyone to ask questions. I think from that first session and even most recently in this session, we can agree, we can all learn from questions and testimonies that you're each sharing. So, you know, like I said in the beginning, we want you to feel at home here. We want you to, you know, this is just very informal and the rest of the day is the same way. So just have a conversation with our panels.
So our first speaker today is going to be with the ADRS Lakeshore office, and her name is Samantha Wasser. And she's got a PowerPoint presentation and a little video to give you a better sense of the scope of our agency. We are a very broad agency. We start with early intervention. We've got Children's Rehabilitation Service. We've got Vocational Rehabilitation Service, and then State of Alabama Independent Living. And then Sam works for such a neat and innovative part of our agency, which is our Lakeshore location. I'm going to let her take over.
Sure. Okay. Good morning. I have to have slides. I'm very impressed that they were able to just kind of talk about all this information and give you all the detail without some visuals. I need visuals. So they have already talked some about our children's rehab program. So we are going to look at just kind of some visuals of that. And like Ginny said, a video to kind of give you guys a better kind of view of our department, and then we'll kind of get into a little bit more about vocational rehab, which would be the step after children's rehab services. So you can go ahead and click. So this is just a little bit about, again, ADRS in general. So we are an agency, we're kind of unique in the nation actually, that we have services all under one department for individuals with disabilities from birth to adulthood, where in other states it's kind of pieced in different agencies. So that can be really nice, especially later Ginny will be talking about our teen transition clinic. So that can be very helpful when you're transferring from one part of the agency to the next. I need some new data, but we serve roughly around 50,000 Alabamians a year. We are statewide, and so every county in the state has a ADRS office associated with them, and later in the presentation I'll show you where you can go to find that information for you guys. So our mission is to enable Alabama's children and adults with disabilities to achieve their maximum potential. And again, we have 4 divisions, and these are our 4 divisions: early intervention, and then children's rehab, vocational rehab, which is what I'll be talking about because I know the most about that, that's where I work, and then our SAIL program, our independent living program. So this is going to be a video that kind of gives you a nice overview of those services.
One department, one mission. The Alabama Department of Rehabilitation Services is the state agency providing services to individuals with disabilities over a lifetime. ADRS offers a continuum of services through 4 major programs: Alabama's Early Intervention System, Children's Rehabilitation Service, Vocational Rehabilitation Service, and the State of Alabama Independent Living Homebound Service. Each program has a distinct role, but all work together, creating a seamless transition from program to program through such services as specialized medical care and therapies, vocational training and job placement. ADRS makes self-sufficiency and independence possible for Alabamians with disabilities. Early childhood development is essential to the growth and success of all children. But for a child with a disability or developmental delay, the early years are crucial.
So Anna Pruitt came to us from the hospital right away. She was referred, and we came out to the family to see them for the first initial intake and for evaluation and assessment.
When you bring her home, but you don't know a single thing about caring for a special needs baby, that's where the value and the importance of early intervention has been for me, at least as a dad.
Early intervention provides services to infants and toddlers and their families through a community-based, family-centered system of support. With the focus on the child's development, EI staff work directly with families to meet the needs of their child.
This has helped me see that all the options that are out there for her and all the help that could make her life better for her. And so in that, it's just made me more confident in the fact that, hey, she's gonna be fine.
And today she feels more confident in where she is and where she's going with early intervention and the next step in the school system. And if we can have every family say that, I think that's the true success of early intervention.
For parents of children and teens younger than 21 years old with special health care needs, Children's Rehabilitation Service can be a valuable resource. Community-based offices around the state offer a team approach to bring together healthcare specialists from many fields, providing services tailored to each family's needs.
CRS and early intervention always, helps us figure out what the future holds for her and to make sure she's able to complete that goal. They watch her move and see how she moves and see what else they can do to make her mobility better.
Well, mobility is really important because that's how kids learn. They explore their environment, they get into things, and they learn about what's going on by interacting with it.
If a child with a disability is in school, CRS collaborates with school systems to provide expertise and consultation for assessment, evaluation, therapy services, and assistive devices to give the child the support he or she needs to succeed in the classroom.
CRS does a good job of making sure that it's easy to communicate with them, the parent and the student. So without CRS's help, then it makes my job a lot harder being able to communicate with the students. So they're helping me be able to be a more effective teacher.
I would have like C's and D's, not A's and B's, because I can understand what the teacher's teaching.
Vocational Rehabilitation Services general and blind deaf programs offer employment and educational opportunities to individuals with disabilities. VR collaborates with vocational schools, community colleges, and universities statewide to help students with disabilities receive appropriate educational opportunities.
When I was a freshman in high school, I started noticing cars, and I thought maybe I'd like to work on cars. And I let ADRS know, and they advised me to go to EH Gentry and improve my skills. I can understand now what deaf culture really was. My goal is to graduate Lawson State, and I would like to continue working here part-time until I graduate.
For individuals with limited mobility, cognitive disabilities, and low vision, ADRS offers adaptive driving services statewide through the ADRS Lakeshore office located in Birmingham. The program provides vehicle modifications, evaluations, and driver training for teenagers and adults with disabilities. When it comes to employment in Alabama, VR works closely with employers, community rehabilitation programs, and other state agencies to match people to jobs.
Having a partnership with a business means that they can pick up the phone and call us at any time, that they feel that they need services and we'll be there.
They actually do the initial recruiting and decide who is suited here, what job they're suited for. Can they comply with our policies? Do they have a strong background that they can do the jobs that we have? They also go out and train those people.
The State of Alabama Independent Living Homebound Program offers life-sustaining services. For people with more significant disabilities, living in their own home instead of a nursing home is the best possible outcome.
In the beginning, I felt so bad. I just wanted whatever others would do. That would be just fine. But now, I'm grateful for whatever measure of independence I can achieve.
SAIL assists individuals with significant disabilities in maintaining and regaining as much independence as possible, while the SAIL VR hybrid program offers consumers the opportunity for education and employment.
I never in a million years thought that I would be able to come to a place like Mono Valley, but then I met the folks at ADRS, and now I'm here, and now I'm starting to get an idea and a picture of what I want to do with my life. I mean, if I didn't have ADRS, I wouldn't be able to come here and be doing any of the things that I'm doing now.
For thousands of Alabamians with disabilities who face challenges in their lives, the road to the future begins with the Alabama Department of Rehabilitation Services.
Our work is about the individuals we serve. Their stories epitomize the heart and soul of our efforts and highlight their determination to succeed despite significant obstacles. Every baby, child, teenager, and adult who comes through our doors has a unique set of challenges, needs, dreams, and aspirations. That's what motivates us. That's why we strive every day to provide quality services that pave the way for long-term success.
The Alabama Department of Rehabilitation Services is dedicated to providing a seamless system of services to Alabama's children and adults with disabilities. One department, one mission. Whether the person is a child born with a disability or someone who acquires a disability later in life, the goal is the same: self-sufficiency and independence, with individualized services provided at homes, schools, the workplace, and the community. ADRS assists every person in achieving his or her maximum potential.
Okay, sorry, this is a long video, but I think it's nice to kind of see the pictures and the stories to kind of give a better representation. And they can do a lot better job than I can, kind of talking about all those different divisions. So I'm going to kind of go through these slides really quickly and get to the Voc Rehab part so we can kind of talk about that. And then Ashley is going to talk to you about our rehab engineering program that is always my favorite to hear about because it's so cool. So you can just skip on, just keep clicking. Okay. So, like I said, I'm going to focus on our vocational rehab program, and you may have seen in the video, some examples of how Voc Rehab works with that transition. So we work with children's rehab as they're coming out of that program into work through the teen transition clinic, and then also for individuals that are using the SAIL program, we have a program where we're working with VR and SAIL. So, but I'm going to focus on VR because that's what I know the most. And I did want to say we do have, representatives here that can give you very specific information. We have 2 amazing Voc Rehab counselors here that can answer any questions that you have about that part of the program. So our division is the largest within ADRS because we work with pretty much any type of disability if there is a barrier to employment. If the goal is employment and there's a barrier to employment, so that's, you know, deaf, visual impairments, autism, spina bifida, I mean, any kind of disability, mental illnesses, any of those kind of things would fall under the Voc Rehab category. So one of the things that we kind of pride ourselves on is our goal is to get people out there working. You know, we are a state agency, so yes, we're paid by tax dollars, but we're helping produce tax providers, right? People into the system, but it's so much more important than that. You know, employment is such a part of people's identity, and it can really help. You know, our mission is to help them reach their maximum potential. So I like that I kind of bolded this comment here that employment means pride, dignity, and independence, and being empowered to achieve one's maximum potential. So that is definitely our goal with NBR, is to help that person along that path to succeed in getting that goal of employment, if that's their goal. So to be eligible for Voc Rehab services, you have to be an individual with a disability that is wanting to pursue employment, and there's some sort of barrier there. And I'll talk a little bit in a little while about not only is it if you're trying to pursue employment, you may be trying to like retain your employment. Maybe something happens when you're already working and your job might be in jeopardy, or you may need some sort of accommodations. We can come in then. So it's not just on the front end. And I get a lot of phone calls from parents that they have a child that may be in their late 20s, and they say, oh, well, we didn't know about Voc Rehab when she was in high school, or we decided not to use it, so we missed our opportunity. There is no time that you have to get into our system. So yes, preferably during that transitional period, so that we can help you with some of those services. But that does not mean, you know, sometimes people think that they have to go through the school to get us, like a teacher has to refer them. That's not true. And like Ginny had said earlier with their program, we do not have a certain way that you have to do a referral. So it can be a self-referral. It can be a parent referral. So just please keep that in mind. If there's some reason, or if you know someone who isn't in high school right now, or they're maybe not in a public school, or whatever the situation might be, that we're not connected to the school. We work with the schools, and so a lot of times teachers and school counselors may refer us people so we can identify, but they don't have to be the referral. Does that make sense? I feel like that's a little bit of a soapbox, but I get really sad when I have somebody call me and they're you know, have struggled, and they're, you know, in their late 20s, and I tell them all these things that we could have helped them with earlier. So, but we work with individuals if you are working age, and that is any age that is wanting to work. You know, 16 and up is pretty much our age range, which is a pretty big age range. So we work with people that are 70 if they are wanting to, you know, retain a job or get a new job. So, sorry, I get a little bit on my soapbox about that. Yes.
Are there qualifying diagnoses to be in Voc Rehab?
That's a great question. So, it really is pretty much any disability that's going to cause a barrier to employment. So, for example, if you have a disability and maybe you cannot think of anything that you're going to need, no type of interventions, no type of accommodations, no assistance, then we wouldn't benefit you because you wouldn't need us. However, if there is any medical, physical, cognitive, any of those type of disabilities, if there is intervention that we can do or support that we can provide, then typically you're going to be eligible. So, and there's no necessarily magical paperwork that you have to have. Our VR counselors can kind of tell you a little bit more about what is needed, but you can make a referral and they can kind of help you figure out what is needed to make sure that we can make you eligible. Yes.
Are there limits on how much you can earn if you're on Medicaid disability?
Regarding receiving services?
Services or a job?
So we have, okay, that's kind of I'm trying to make sure I've worded this correctly. So there is no requirements to come in our program. There is no income cap. However, if you are receiving Medicaid, Social Security, those kind of things, we would have you work with one of our benefits specialists to help you figure out how to get employment, but make sure you're not losing that Medicaid and that kind of thing. So they help you kind of find that balance. Does that answer your question? Okay. Anything I'm missing there?
Hey, can you talk a little bit, if you're not enrolled in VR yet, do you want to go through the adaptive driver's training?
Sure.
Can you talk about that whole process from the beginning?
Oh my goodness. I don't know that I know that whole process from the beginning. So hold that question for just a second, because I'm going to get to the slide that kind of talks about the services. Can we do that? Okay. All right, so we do have lots of kind of specialty programs within VR that kind of work within different populations, different, like we have transitional services, we have deaf-blind services, we have our OASIS program, and then we have people that are just kind of specialized within different disabilities. Something I work with a lot is autism. So we have some services that we've developed that are kind of geared toward individuals who have autism to help them with what barriers they typically have for employment. Click. So the types of services that we have, it really depends on what the needs are. What is the goal? What is the employment goal? And what are the needs? And so it's not kind of a menu that we come in and we say, okay, here's the process. I need you go through all these services. We have Voc Rehab Counselors that when you come in and you say, I would like to open a case, I would like to pursue employment, you will be matched up with a Voc Rehab Counselor. And this is kind of determined, depending on your age, it could be through your school or it could be your zip code. Or it could be by disability, because like I said earlier, there's specialized areas as well. So once you're matched up with a Voc Rehab Counselor, this is kind of getting to your answer, a long way to get to your answer, but once you're matched up with a Voc Rehab Counselor and you together determine your goals, then the Voc Rehab Counselor helps you determine what services, and they will make referrals to those different services along the path. So this is kind of a general overview of the services that are offered. And orientation and mobility, that is for individuals that have visual impairment. So that's helping them get navigated to a new environment. So if we have someone that's going into a new job, they would go and help them orient to that job to help them work through that. We have vocational assessments, which is helping determine kind of a plan. What are your strengths? What are some of your barriers? What are your interests? So that we can help you kind of determine what would be some good paths for you and what kind of things you may need along that path. So it's called a vocational evaluation that we do, and a lot of times those are done on the front end. A lot of our consumers that are teens and young adults are coming in for the first time. That's a lot of times one of the earlier services they may receive to help them, especially if they're not real sure exactly what they want to do. It's also beneficial to do the Voc evaluation because sometimes that can help if they are planning to go into a training program or they're planning to go to college. It can help with accommodations that they may need. So, education and counseling. So again, like I said, you are paired with a vocational rehab counselor when you come in, and they again kind of help guide you and provide counseling along that path. Educational services, we work a lot. You will kind of hear that, with every division. We do a lot of collaborations with community partners, school systems, college systems to partner with them to make referrals, that kind of thing. And so part of a lot of people's goal in employment may be some sort of training or education, right? So we kind of helps bridge that gap to getting to education. We also do programs to help prepare you for those next steps. So we have like a college preparation program that kind of helps students know what to expect when they go to college. that's going to be different than high school. I wish I had had that. That would have been very helpful. We have a lot of job training, so we do a lot on the front end because we want you to obviously be very successful once you get in your job. So we do a lot of different programs where we do job readiness. I think I'd mentioned earlier, I work a lot with individuals who have autism, and we will do social skills training programs and that sort of thing that would help them know how to kind of navigate those social roles at work. We have partners, some of those partners are here, where we do job training and job placement to help with if someone needs job coaching or help finding a job, then we partner with them to do that. Assistive Technology, which Ashley's going to talk a lot about later, one of my favorite things to hear about because it can open the door for so many people. But we have assistive technology in the form of we have rehab engineers and other tech specialists. We also have our adaptive driving program that was mentioned, and it was showcased in the video as well. But that program is at my office, our ADRS Lakeshore office, but again, it's statewide, so we have driving trainers all over the state to try to fill the very high demand of that area. So what they will do in that, the rehab counselor, once your case is open, this is, again, back to your question. After the rehab counselor has opened the case and she or he is referring you to the different services, they would refer for the adaptive driving program. And then they would get into that program. And again, it can be, sometimes it is just driving training. So if it's individual maybe that has a cognitive disability, I've seen a lot of individuals who have anxiety, autism, ADHD that are hesitant to get behind the wheel, even if they're, when I was 16, I was ready to get behind that wheel, but I'm seeing a lot of fear, and so that program can be very helpful for those students because they have driving instructors that have the car with the brakes, but they also have lots of adaptive equipment to help them learn, and they can modify cars for individuals that may have a physical disability. So they have the modifications and the training within that program. And it's really, if the Voc Rehab counselor sees it as a need, then they just make that referral. And so there's no fee or anything for that. Did that answer your question? Sort of. Okay. And then we also have post-employment assistance. So going and following up. Again, we partner with different programs that help with placement. And then we also have people in-house that go and kind of check, make sure everything's going well within that job. So that's kind of a overview. Again, it's very specific of what the need, depending on, again, the work goal and what are the needs or barriers for that individual. So, all right, so I was trying to make this seem make a little sense of how it can kind of look different and kind of what that path may look like. So I'm going to do one or two examples. So let's say we had a 40-year-old man that he's employed as a car mechanic, and then he loses an arm in a motorcycle accident. Okay, so he's not needed Voc Rehab previously, but now he has a barrier, and so he's applying for services. So he may come in, go ahead and click it. He may come in and first he may say, I don't want to be a car mechanic anymore. I don't know how I could do that. I really wanted to change anyway. So we may do services with him to help him explore different careers. He may go through the adaptive driving program because he may need some vehicle modifications to help him drive. He may need some help with finding a job and doing placement services. And then, due to the need for maybe some equipment or some technology, you'll probably work with a rehab engineer once he gets on that job to kind of set up whatever accommodations or modifications he might need. I'll do one more example. Let's skip through. Okay. Okay, we'll do this one just because it's a transition age. So we have an 18-year-old young man with autism spectrum disorder, and he wants to become an engineer. So this would be an individual that has not worked previously. So hopefully he came into Voc Rehab Services in high school. His teacher or his parents signed him up. So he would come in and he says, I want to be an engineer. So he may get a vocational evaluation to kind of look to see if he would need accommodations for college. So they would again assess his strengths, what barriers he has, and where his interests are. Because sometimes what someone says they want to do and then what their interests say doesn't always line up. So we want to make sure that they are making informed decisions about their future. And he may go through our adaptive driving program. Again, he doesn't have a physical disability, but his cognitive disability and maybe his fear or anxiety toward driving may be a barrier that needs to be addressed. And then if he's wanting to go to college, we want him to go through our college preparation program, maybe our social skills training program to help him kind of know what are going to be those social rules that he's going to need to know when he goes to work. And then he may need some assistive technology. We see that a lot when they're going to college or when they're getting on a job. And then he may go to college and we may just kind of touch base with him as he's going through school and he gets out, he's got his degree, yay. And then we will come back in and say, okay, let's help find you a job. Okay, so some cases, I get asked that a lot too, like how long is a case? It again depends on what is that person's goal. Where are they at? What are they trying to get to? Determines how long their case will be open. So it may be a few months, it may be several years. So just real quick, and I touched on this earlier, but we also have retention. So we're not always just on the front end trying to help someone get a job, but it may be that there is some sort of barriers once someone's on the job. It could be that something happens. Maybe someone sustains, has a car accident, has a stroke, something happens, and then they may not have needed our services. They have a job, but now they need help keeping that job. That's when our retention program would come in, and we would kind of do a lot of those same kind of services, but to help them keep the job they already have. So I like to bring that up because a lot of people don't realize we have that, and I think it can be a very important piece of our program. Okay.
I have one quick question.
Yes.
When somebody goes through the adaptive driver program or assistive technology, and there's a need is identified, does ADRS help pay for, say, the modifications to a person's car or whatever assistive technology they might need?
That's based on, that one is kind of a by case basis. So
depends on which program brought them to the table.
Can you hear her?
So a lot of the services that are mentioned can be accessed in different ways, and so depending on what program within our agency brought you to the table may also depend on your funding stream. And so we always try to be a little bit careful about saying where state funding can be utilized until we know the very specific case, because it usually is super case by case. So there's a non-answer.
Okay, we'll skip through this, and I'm going to show you real quick just how to find out what office you would reach out to. I assume everyone's local from maybe the Birmingham area, but just in case, just keep clicking. Oh, and I already mentioned this earlier about transition clinic, which Ginny would talk about later. This is just about our independent living program. So, just keep clicking, Ben, I'm sorry. Okay, so this is our website. So it's rehab.alabama, spelled out, .gov. And when you go onto that website, on the very front page, if you see where that arrow is pointing, it's going to say locations. And if you click on that, there will be a drop-down box. I think I have on the next slide. Yes, there'll be a drop-down box so you can see like what services you're trying to get. Are you looking for early intervention, children's rehab, Voc Rehab, and then or SAIL, and you'll click it. Then you'll put in your county, and then it's going to show you what office that you would call to get your care provider. I don't know, because it's kind of different case managers, different person by each program, because in Voc Rehab you're going to have a rehab counselor. But if you're unsure or you have questions, you can, on that main page, they have the state office information at the bottom. So, in this last page, just click one more time. And this is my contact information. I work at the ADRS Lakeshore office. I don't have all the answers, obviously, but I can help connect you if you need to be connected or you have some questions. So feel free to reach out to me if you'd like. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ashley. Hers is going to be much more exciting than mine. She has much more fun things than I do. But.
My goodness, they've built some big old shoes for me to fill, and I have tiny feet. So hopefully this will be as exciting as they say it is. We're going to wait. There's my slides. So I'm Ashley McLeroy. I'm a rehab engineer with ADRS, and I work out of the Homewood office. I've also worked in Huntsville for several years prior to being in Homewood. We also have a new project, which Ginny touched on briefly. It's called Accessing Potential Through Assistive Technology, APTAT for short. That is a new project of our program that involves the lending library that was mentioned, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. Okay, so Rehab Engineering Services. We work with every division in ADRS. So we don't just work with VR, CRS, we also work with SAIL, and we can work with early intervention. So as long as someone is eligible for ADRS services and they are enrolled, they're eligible for rehab engineering and assistive technology. And it doesn't matter what disability, it doesn't matter what the goal is, except for adaptive driving. We don't do adaptive driving, we don't do sitting positioning. You've already heard about those things. Our engineers don't do that. However, we do work in school settings, we work in job settings, home environments, or anywhere else you need us to work. I've gone into physical therapy clinics to work with someone in that setting as well. We're involved in many roles throughout the agency. For example, we have job site accommodations. We work with our retained and valued employee program. For someone who has a job, acquires a disability, needs to be able to retain that job. We also work frequently with educational assistive technology and accommodation. So we can go into school settings, or we can just work with individuals outside of the school to try to figure out what accommodations they need, either in grade school settings, trade school, college. We also work through CRS in the Augmentative Communication Clinic, so you will see our staff in ACT. You'll also see us in Teen Transition Clinic. We are involved, we come in, we listen to the vocational evaluation results so we can understand the aptitudes of that individual, their interests, and then we can recommend assistive technology based on those results. We can also work with VR, CRS, and SAIL consumers for home modifications. So we can come into your home and look to see if there's modifications that need to be done to make it more accessible. That can be ramps, bathroom modifications, kitchen modifications. We don't actually do the modifications, but we're here to support and provide you with recommendations that would help. And then hopefully through working with the case managers, we can find resources to help you make those modifications. We also do recommendations for independent living and assistive technology for aids for daily living. And so that could be kitchen items, it could be tools to help you with dressing, brushing your teeth, anything that you would need to be able to live independently. And finally, we can also help you create some environmental control systems. So back in the day when I started, environmental control systems were $20,000 to set up this system that someone with a disability could use to open doorways and turn on their TV and lights, and now we can use Alexa and Google Home and all those wonderful smart home products. And so if you're not too familiar with it, but you would like to start using some of it to be able to do things more independently in your home, then our staff can come in and help you figure out what system works best for the individual. Okay. So, just briefly, I'm going to go over some ideas and things that we have available that we've done. As far as commercial assistive technology, so we can just take items off the shelf and use it as an accommodation. That's most often what we do because we want to make the process easy for everyone. And so the examples that I have on the screen on the top left, I'm installing a mount for a communication device because it's important for positioning if someone's going to use eye gaze to have proper positioning. So we can do this through the communication clinic. We can also help with device positioning for school. So very often, like Ms. McCartney, if she needs access to her laptop during the day, we can install positioning items. And McCartney is an incredible person that we've worked with. She utilizes a lot of assistive technology. She utilizes it really well. So she always gives us great feedback, and she's one of those that we can go to and say, you want to try this? And she always pretty much says sure. So we love that. Okay, so on the top right, this is a storage solution that we came up with for someone who was working at a retail store and had to take items to the cash register and return it back throughout the store. And he kept dropping the items as he was using the wheelchair, trying to propel himself, and dropping the items. This was a really simple solution we came up with. It's a little tool bag connected to the side of his chair. On the bottom left, we have an iPad mounted to a wheelchair, and we're connecting it to his wheelchair joystick. So that's one of the fun new things we get to do now, because wheelchairs can have this technology built in using Bluetooth to connect as a mouse, and it will connect to any device that can emulate a mouse. And so our staff can help you with that. We also work very closely with the DME vendors to work through that process to get these wheelchairs connected to your devices. On the bottom right, we have an individual who was going to college. He needed access to his device throughout the day rather than having to rely on someone to pull his items out of his backpack. So we mounted his iPad to his wheelchair. Next slide. Okay, and then our engineers can also get involved with coming up with custom engineering solutions. And so we can either take products off the shelf, modify those, or we can develop entirely new systems. We don't do that quite as often because of limited resources, but we are available to at least attempt to do it for you if necessary. So these are some really simple examples I wanted to give you because I want you to see that engineering doesn't have to be complicated. And so you can come to us with these little small things and see if we have a solution that we can come up with. So on the top, we have an individual who didn't have funding for a mount to position her switch. So she used this switch. It was a proximity switch. She just needed to get just close enough to it to activate her communication device. There was no funding there, so I went to Lowe's, bought an 89-cent garden stake, attached that to her wheelchair, and that's what we attached the switch to. On the bottom left, we have an individual who uses their foot to access their devices. This person does use a bed nearly full time, and so we needed to attach the mount to the bed. However, because it was a CRS consumer, there were not funds available to purchase this expensive mount, so thankfully we had one donated back to us that we could then use for this individual. So our staff will also try to find resources to try to make these things possible. And we also built a little foot stand for her to relieve some of the pressure of using her leg. On the bottom right, this is a situation where a mom came to me and said, my daughter would like to be able to access her drink at school throughout the day instead of having to ask her aide to give her a drink. I love when people ask me about drinking because I'm a thirsty person. And so I'm like, I don't know how someone would go all day without having access to a drink. I think it's very important in school and vocational settings to have access to food and beverage if necessary. And so the mom had bought this cup holder. It's a standard cup holder for a wheelchair. However, this individual only had the ability to turn just slightly over their shoulder to access their drink. And they didn't use the standard like bottles that would go in the regular cup holders. She liked U-Boots. And so mom said, you have a way to mount this to her wheelchair so that she can access her drink independently. So I went into my workshop and I scrounged and found some spare parts. She gave me the cup holder that she had purchased, and I created a little mount arm attached to the back of her chair and brought it around to her shoulder so that she could access her drink. Okay, so we can also help with home accessibility. These examples are for access in and out of the home. Our rehab engineers come out and we try to help the families come up with a solution to what's the best way to modify this home to make it accessible. A lot of times we're looking at wheelchair access. Even if the person doesn't use a wheelchair, if there's potential that they ever might use a wheelchair, and with my golly, almost everyone in their lifetime, as they age, will need their home to be more accessible. So we try to take that into consideration. We can recommend things like platform lifts. They're very expensive. So we've got to talk to the family and find out, is that even feasible? Or is there funding there for that? If not, then we will look at a grant system. Our ADRS staff through SAIL can help try to find volunteers to build the ramps, and sometimes there's funding available to take the materials. Sometimes, I can't speak on everyone's funding situation. However, we have some success with getting grants built through ADRS. And our engineers go out and we recommend and try to work with the families to determine what would be the preferred layout of the home. And then based on that individual's needs, does it need to just meet ADA standards, or do we need to look at something slightly different? For instance, an 85-year-old man pushing his 90-year-old wife up the ramp. Does the ramp need to be very low slope? And so our engineers take that into consideration. And then sometimes you guys buy homes that just cannot be modified easily. Split levels are some of the hardest to modify. So sometimes we have to look at other options. And we can work with DME vendors to look at items like this stair assist transport chair to see if that's a better option for the family than modifying their home. Sometimes the cost to modify is just outrageous. So hopefully our engineers can help you through that process. Okay. All right, so more specifically, let me give you some suggestions on what it's like working with a rehab engineer through the transition process. We love when we get consumers young. So VR doesn't enroll till 15, 16, not very rarely 15, right? Ladies? Very rarely. 15, 16. We want it younger than that sometimes. And we can get those referrals through CRS because sometimes you have individuals who need to start learning how to use technology very early because it's something we need to build on. So our staff can work with any age. And so if we can get someone at 12, 13 years old and start working with them, start implementing a technology a little bit at a time, that means by the time they reach the end of their senior year, we've got them in a place where they can at least feel like they can be successful moving on to college or career. So we hope to get someone early on in the transition process. All right. So it's really hard to tell you all the things that we do in our program because we cover so many different areas. These are just going to be some examples of things that we've done through each different type of transition stage. So for job exploration, this is an example of a project that was done for Project Search, which is a wonderful program through VR where they take high school students and put them into job, it's like a job experience. I'm not saying this correctly, but they get to go work in these facilities for different periods of time and get some job skills. And so we were working with some high school students who were filling bags at a granola company. Several of the students had trouble with fine motor, and so they were not able to hold the bags as they were pouring in the granola. So our engineer worked with that group and developed a station where it had a funnel, an easy way to open the bags. Even it's not showing this picture, but an easy way to open the bags, and that way they could successfully fill the bags through their Project Search program. Okay, so let's say that we have someone that's doing job training. Okay, so I was working with a student at a vocational school who was only able to use one hand. He was in the t-shirt screening course in his vocational program. And because he was only able to use one hand, Whenever he would pull the squeegee, it was not pushing the paint evenly across the screen. So I love this part of my job. I get to go and learn all different kinds of jobs. And so I didn't know that about t-shirt screening. And so as he was pulling it, it was unevenly distributing the paint. And so we had to figure out a way with one hand, how can we make this more successful for him? It doesn't have to be a difficult accommodation, right? So the school gave me one of the squeegees and allowed me to attach this handle to the squeegee. So I attached it in the middle, it's adjustable, so depending on whatever height the workstation's at, he can adjust the angle of the handle. And what that does is he can hold that handle with one hand. As you're seeing in the photo, he actually used it a little bit differently than I thought he would. And so he can put the pressure directly in the center of that squeegee, and it distributes evenly across the screen as he's pulling the squeegee. Okay? So let's say we have someone going into post-secondary education. This example is a student who went into cosmetology thinking that she was just going to do nails. The issue was she used 4 on crutches for mobility, and everyone had told her you're not going to be able to be a hairstylist because you have to be able to stand behind the client's chair and you have to be able to use your hands at the same time. And so for her, having to use 4 on crutches, she was disappointed because she's saying, I can't stand without my 4 on crutches and use a comb and scissors and all the things I need to do. Also, she couldn't use a standard stool because in cosmetology the rule is, did y'all know this? You can't raise your elbows above your shoulder. So it wasn't like she could just sit in a regular stool and raise her hands up to the top of the customer's hair. She needed to be able to adjust the height of herself to get to what she needed to do on the person's head. And so we came in and we said, you're going to be able to do this. Because she said, I've been in school, I was going to just do nails, but now I've got to try hair cutting. I really love it. I really wish I could pursue it. Okay, we're going to do it. So we ended up working with DR to purchase her an adjustable stool. It's power adjustable, so she can sit in it at regular seat height, which is good for someone with mobility issues. And then she can press the button and raise herself up. She can also easily pull herself around the client as she's working on their hair. Okay. So for college, we have lots of things we can do. We have fabulous assistive technology specialists at Huntsville, who is sort of our expert on the team. We can go to that person and say, what's the new tech out there for college students? What are they going to use? What are they going to want to use? The fabulous thing nowadays is that college students are bringing technology into the classroom. 10 years ago, our consumers were afraid to take the technology we recommended into the classroom because they didn't want to look different. And then you have college professors who say, oh, you can't bring a laptop, you can't use a laptop in my class, you can't use your cell phone. Well, now it's so common for students to do that our consumers feel comfortable bringing their assistive technology into the classroom. And well, I would have wanted this technology myself. Any student would want to use some of the things that we get to recommend. And so we talked to them about note-taking technology, tools for studying, tools for completing assignments like Dragon Naturally Speaking. You're a big user of Dragon Naturally Speaking to complete assignments. And so we try to cover all the bases as far as what kind of technology they need to be able to do all the things independently at school. We also talk to them about access to devices. So how do you want to access your device during the day? Do you want to allow somebody to pull out your laptop for you to use in class? Or would you like to be able to have it on a mount that you can just go to class and have access to your device? Also, we can look at dorm accommodations to figure out, if we need to work with the college to recommend accommodations that are beyond what they're typically used to. We can also do that. And this is where I'm saying it's very important to start working on this early. It's intimidating for a student to come to us the month before they're supposed to start college, when college is already terrifying. And then we say, you need to use all this technology. Well, that's a lot to learn. And I can almost always guarantee you, as soon first semester of college because it's already too overwhelming. Just getting in that new routine of college and all the higher expectations that they have, and no longer have that school ache that was with them through high school. And so we really, really, really want to recommend these things at least a year before they enter college, because it's hard to learn the technology. You have to use it consistently to become a good user, and you have to be a good user to use it successfully for assignments. So please keep a note that it's important to get to us early. Okay, so for job skill development, so this is a job carving example. This was an individual who needed a chair, a mount on their chair to carry trays out of a restaurant. This was a job that was carved for them. They've never had a job before, so they wanted to be able to do this skill, carry dirty trays from tables to the trash can. Okay. So we want to also increase tasks. This was an individual who already had a job, and her employer said, we want her to be able to do another task, which is use the cash register, check out clients at the cash register. She couldn't reach the cash register, so we went in and built a custom stool, drawer stool, so that she could utilize the cash register, but then it also pushes out of the way so that it's not in the way of all the other employees who need to get behind that tiny little area behind the cash register. Okay. So an established job example, we had someone who was not able to reach all the way, they couldn't extend their arm entirely to do grass trimming. We couldn't do the accommodation of doing a different job task. Everyone had to start at the grass trimming, and so we had to modify the grass trimmer in order to suit his abilities. Okay, and this is another individual, I can't see that text, so I don't know if y'all can, who had an unspecified muscle weakness, was not able to use a mop and broom properly, so we modified those items for him on his first job so that he could successfully do all the tasks that were being asked of him. Okay, so for independent living, some examples that we can do: smart home technology, different tools and gadgets, and reminder systems as well. Okay, so how do you catch us? You ask an ADRS case manager, whoever you're enrolled with, whoever the student's enrolled with, to send us a referral for rehab engineering and assistive technology. Okay, so APTAT, that's the new project that Ginny mentioned that our rehab engineering program is now developing, and it's less than a year old, so we have a lot of work to do. We're looking for partners, we're looking for grants. We want to be able to provide the services to you guys in the community, and so we are partnering with STAR, who receives federal grants through the Assistive Technology Act, and we're providing the following activities, which is a lending library of assistive technology for Alabama citizens. So anyone can borrow the items from our lending library for a short-term loan to try it out before you buy it. Because we understand the situation that you brought up. Devices can be expensive. It doesn't matter if it's a $50 item. That's still a lot to buy and not know if it works. So we have been gradually adding items to our lending library over the last couple of months. And so you can go and check those items out. We'll get it to you. You can borrow it for 30 days, try it out, see if it works, and then decide if you want to purchase the item yourself. So we can also provide AT demonstrations, AT training, technical assistance to organizations who are looking to improve their assistive technology services, and we can also provide information and referral. If you contact me, then I can hopefully get you to the right person in the community that can answer your questions. Okay, so this is the link to our lending library. Go to https:// I'm an engineer, I don't know. Take me a minute. //al.atforall.com, and we have just added over 160 items, different items including daily living aids, computer access, assistive technology, workstation, AT, and smart home tech. We would love to add items that you specifically would want to try out. So on the next page, if you'll scan this QR code, we have a participant survey. We do have to keep up with who we've talked to, so if y'all don't mind filling out this participant survey, there's 3 questions that are required, but I also have the links. All these links on this page are on this website that you'll get from the QR code. And our training website is startraining.org. Let's see. Facebook and LinkedIn is probably where you're going to get the most information on what we're updating. We're posting our trainings there. We're also posting items that are adding to the Lynn Library, as well as our e-newsletter. So if you'll text at that to 22828, then that'll sign you up for our e-newsletter. And then important websites that you're going to want to know are rehab.alabama.gov, which Sam mentioned, and our lending library website, and this AT3 Center website. That is the national website for all of these technology assistance programs like APDAT. So if you are talking to someone in another state that wants information about their technology assistance programs, they can go to this website, as well as you can go figure out what kind of services we're supposed to be providing. So if you're not able to scan this, please email me. My email is at the bottom of this slide. But also, I have put some brochures at the VR services table back here that are for rehab engineering and STAR programs, so you can get more information about this. We're out of time. So, darn. If y'all have questions, please fill out the survey, because on the second section of the survey, you can ask questions and I'll get back to you, okay? All right.
Thank you, Ashley. That was good information. Okay, we're going to break for lunch, and so if you guys want to start from the back and go this way, there's nuke sandwiches, there's different kinds for you to choose from, and y'all can just kind of make a line that way. We will wait to come back till 12:15. The schedule says 12 o'clock, but let's wait till 12:15